So just going through the setup, I guess.
I think we're already live. It shows live in the actual on in the main screen versus the other one more quickly. So I think we're already live.
Okay. So welcome to the working group meeting on 9 July 2019. We have myself, Utam, Michael, Octavian, and Gabriel online. So let's go over our agenda. I would appreciate if everyone can add their name and Twitter and the GitHub handle to the document. I'm going to start here with mine. Okay. So looks like we have only one item on our agenda, which is issue number 2 to 5 to discuss. So let's go over there. So this is still about the core workloads, the buffers, and so there is no update from either Gareth or they are. I don't know whether did you get a chance to talk to any one of them, Michael?
I haven't followed up with them. I think at this point we have to assume that they're no longer going to have time to work on it.
Okay. I know there was a last comment we had was Gabriel was going to write a proposal for an alternative approach. So I would maybe ask Gabriel if he got any time to think about it, about the proposal, or
if you're talking about like running the, are you talking about running the benchmarks periodically?
Yeah, we talk about multiple ways. We thought because we have so many of those micro benchmarks, we thought we could take the subset. We could run either weekly basis, and we could run all of them maybe once a month kind of thing. So there's some kind of proposal, some kind of proposal we need or approach we need to cover micro benchmarks in this.
Regarding that can we do like a random sample of benchmarks, like a time limited random sample, and then if we limit it to like 2 hours or something like that, then we can just run certain benchmarks at certain times, and we just choose randomly, and so we can run that more often that way, and the data points would be a little sparser, but at least on average all the benchmarks would be covered, except maybe buffer, because buffer takes a long time. No matter how rarely you run it, it always takes a long time. That was my only thought that I had on this topic, and I'm wondering what you guys think about that.
Go ahead,
Michael. I just wonder about how would you think that we would display that or consume the data?
Well, I mean, it would basically be like the graphs would be exactly the same as they are today, right? Only they would be sparser, right? But in the end, if you do this for long enough, then the data points would come together just as densely as they are now, right?
Well, yeah, except we don't have problems running our existing benchmarks that we have the charts for. It's all the micro benchmarks which we don't have any data for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, right, like we have some representative benchmarks now. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, we have, they're not the micro benchmarks, but there's only like 10 of them. The question's always been, for the micro benchmarks, there's like hundreds.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how would you, like, having hundreds of charts, and it's like, I don't think that like hundreds of charts are something anybody's going to look at easily or regularly, or
yeah.
Wrong though. My question is really around like, whatever we do, how is it consumable and useful to people, right?
Right. I mean, Yeah, I guess we could take like the lazy evaluation approach, and just have charts and cache them and generate them on the fly. So for things that are never needed except once, it takes that person a long time to see their chart, but the data would be there, right? If we did this random sampling, we would just be collecting data but not generating any charts, right? However, the charts would practically be there, except of course you have to run the generation algorithm on a particular query, right? So the
Yeah.
charts would virtually be there, but they wouldn't actually be generated until somebody's asking for them.
Irrespective, I think the
Mhm.
question was how do we represent the result from all these different world micro benchmarks into maybe one chart, or do we need to generate hundreds of charts, even though they're dynamically asked, or generate whenever
Oh
we
yeah,
need?
yeah, no, no, yeah. I guess what are people interested in, right? I mean, they just made a change and they want to know how it affects things, or a change that they
Right.
made, like maybe they want to see before a release, uh, how the change has affected performance, right? So if we run the random sample like every night, you know then chances are that before a release is made, at least 2 or 3 samples will have been collected of the benchmark that is relevant to them, you know and so they can have a look. They go in, the chart is generated for their particular case, and they can check what happened. There are a few data points from like 3 months ago, and then there are a few from like 2 days ago, which happens to be after the commit in question landed, and so they'll have a little bit of data for comparison. Is that a useful use case, or is that a representative use case? I'm thinking.
There is definitely that's a good thinking, I guess. We probably, but I still want to add one comment is, should we think about what would be the, if someone has to give a priority to all these benchmarks, which one would be critical one that we have to measure or good to have?
Yeah, see, those are, yeah, classifying the benchmarks like that is a tough problem, right? I mean, we're having the same problem with the buffer benchmark, right? There's one PR that was submitted to try to cut back on the number of buffer benchmarks, and we still couldn't decide. Like even at the TSC level, it's like, okay, but we are going to be missing some stuff, because the benchmark doesn't strictly eliminate duplicates. It does eliminate some benchmarks, and so you know we would be losing perspective. And so arguing as to whether this particular aspect, benchmarking a particular aspect, is important or not important, or how important it is, from 0 to 5, it's tough to classify. That's the impression I'm getting from that buffer benchmarking sort of revision PR.
Not just a buffer. I'm just thinking overall. If
No, no,
you,
no, no. I know. But what I'm saying is, if it's so difficult to decide for a single benchmark, which is buffer, it's going to be that conversation repeated over and over and over for all the different benchmarks. So I suspect that coming up with a classification might be complicated, and a slow-moving process, and we'd need to consult a lot of people, and a lot of people would need to agree that, okay, this benchmark is good to have, but it's not critical, and making this decision for every single benchmark might take a long time.
okay.
So that's why I was thinking, like, if we do a random sample, then it doesn't matter how important the benchmark is, eventually we'll get to it, and that, because what is the limiting factor? The limiting factor is CPU time, right? Because we don't want to hog the whole system just for our benchmarks. That's one end of the spectrum, and the other end of the spectrum is you run these benchmarks only as needed. But then, of course, you don't have perspective, right? Like, you need to know how the performance of any given micro benchmark changes over time, right? And so I think the in-between solution is, give us as much CPU time as you can, and we'll try to distribute it as randomly as possible across the benchmarks, and get some numbers, and then there's a good chance, not a perfect chance, but there's a good chance that you will get the perspective that you need once you look at the numbers when you need to. You know, the numbers may not be there, in which case you're like, dang, okay, can we do a run for this particular commit ID now? You know, because I really need to have this before and after picture. But normally we will run a set of benchmarks that fits within the CPU time that we have allocated. So that's what I'm thinking. But of course, you know, implementing all this is a different question. It just seems like the kind of thing that we may want to be doing.
Okay.
I think like capturing the suggestions / thoughts in an issue would probably be a good way to, like, you know, basically have that way we can think about it a bit, chime in.
Yeah. The issue would have to list the benchmarks though, you know, because I guess a lot of people will not care about the large swaths of benchmarks will be irrelevant for them. You know,
I meant even more among our own group, right? Like, I can see them thinking a little bit, and it's probably good that, you know, you can think about it for a few days and then comment on that issue. And
okay, yeah.
Like,
so
here's, you know, to have an issue that says, here's the proposal for how to do this, and then, you know, we can have a discussion, and then there's a record of, you know, why we've discarded certain things, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and maybe have people edit the comment, you know, like upvote parts of it, downvote parts of it, that kind of thing.
So should we open a new issue, selecting or with this proposal? Let's put forward a proposal that this is what we will be doing, and get some feedback from the community.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. You know, what granularity are we looking at here? Like, we're gonna treat each file as a separate benchmark, right? Like, we're not talking about like individual parameters. Like, this parameter is more important. You know, testing with 512 byte chunks is more important than testing with 1024 byte chunks. I mean, we're not going in that kind of level of granularity, right?
I think that, I mean, based on what I understand you're suggesting, we wouldn't.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, it would be really nice if there was like a subset, but like, I agree with what you said, that choosing that subset's not easy, right?
Yeah. So, okay, but I think that's it's a good idea to have this issue. And, you know, I mean, if people chime in, they might chime in, you know, structurally as well as in terms of just adding data to the issue. You know, they may say, no, break it up like this because that's better. You know, I mean, ideas come not when you solicit them, but sometimes spontaneously, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so we can pick certain benchmarks or random benchmarks with a fixed number of maybe whatever input it has, maybe number of iterations it has, the size of the data it has. We pick one number and run those. Is that what we are saying?
Well, I was thinking, like, you know,
which makes sense actually, because otherwise it will be it won't be able to finish in allocated time or whatever time.
Okay, but
it could make sense to just run a portion every night.
Yeah.
Rather than a random portion, just do the first 10th, second 10th, or 20th, or whatever, and over time it'll all fill in, right? Because really, you don't want to. Is it worthwhile having 2 for one and 0 for another? It may be better just to have 1 for everything and to run it in a way that gives you that, right?
There are ways of doing randomness, right? Like, you could randomly fill in the range, you know, and then you do not repeat the benchmark until you've run all the benchmarks. You know, that's one concept of fairness. So, you know,
yeah, no, yes, that would work well as well too. I was just thinking, whatever, you know, what I was thinking off the top of my head is it probably makes sure to pick something that makes sure we run everything once before we start rerunning other things.
Yeah. So basically, basically just sort of shoot at it in the dark until there's no paper left, kind of thing, and then you put up a new sheet of paper and start shooting again.
And then in that case, is it like, why be random at all? Why not just do a section
sequentially?
Yeah.
So there are 12. I think there are top 12 categories or 15 categories we have. We can take one, run in sequence, pick one. So that way, maybe we can cover all the inputs it has already in the files. So we don't have to pick and choose a number. We can just run that one. Okay, today I'm going to run buffer. Tomorrow maybe data view. Whatever sequence we have.
Yeah, yeah, and you get to whichever combination of parameters you get to, and then you stop because you run out of CPU time.
Yeah. We were actually about the CPU time. We did talk about using that Broadwell machine,
Yep.
Intel donated. So we can use that just for these micro benchmarks, right,
Yep.
Michael?
Okay, yeah, so it's dedicated. Okay, but then
And
we run
it
into a problem of saturation. Like, how long will it take to get through all parameters of all the benchmarks? You know, I mean, that could take a long
That's
time.
still multiple days. So,
multiple days, yeah, yeah. So we
But
say that we
yeah.
just run one a day. They say, So we have a
that's not
list.
bad. That's not bad. If we
Yeah.
have a repetition, like if the machine runs 100% CPU all day, every day, then we'll have one data point for each benchmark every 2-3 days. I mean, that's great. I mean, how long does a PR that may affect performance of one benchmark, how long does that take to land? I mean, 2-3 days, right? So it lands, and 2-3 days later, we will know if there was a performance impact or not.
Well, that assumes somebody goes and looks for it, but
We look for it. Yeah.
but it does mean that, yeah. I mean, I think that's if we basically had it all
Well,
running.
I mean, yeah, I mean, the
Oh, oh, you're on mute, Gabriel.
It's more that, like, what you suggest would give enough data points that somebody could run a subset of benchmarks they think are important and then compare against past history, which would be good.
Hmm. So I believe I know Gabriel somehow it just shows he's on mute, but I think we should put a proposal like that. Okay, we have these top categories. We are going to run one a day and then kind of cover all of them over maybe a 2 weeks period. If
Yep.
not within 3 days or 4 days, that is still good enough.
Yep.
And if someone wants to go detail, at least we have a mechanism or infrastructure to run this benchmarking in our benchmarking setup. Right now, we
Yep.
don't have anything.
Yeah. We'll still have to figure out, like, how do we extract the data points? How do we store them?
That's the next problem.
How do we make them? How do we make them available? But yeah, just getting something that will run it, so you could go and look at, say, the console output to find the results is a first step.
Yeah, getting meaningful information out of it may take a little more thinking, but at least we have something which is running.
Yep.
And by the time release comes, and we can at least have some data set.
Exactly.
We
Yeah. Yeah. For example, at a release, we could go and somehow look at even if the file could be stored somewhere and then a delta be done on the files or something, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
well, MySQL dump anyone?
What was that?
MySQL dump anyone?
Right. So yeah, I mean, today the existing ones we have actually post individual results to MySQL.
Yeah.
But I think in this case, I'm not sure that that's the best way, like, because we'd have to extract all the data points individually, push them out. It might be better to somehow, like, store the files, and then, because there's already, like, I think a comparison. You can use the run that says show me the deltas between two runs.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we could somehow reuse that says, from the data points, the most recent data points, maybe it takes 3 or 4 or 5, 6, whatever days. If we could pull that into one thing you could compare against or something, and then
Yeah.
that basically would let you say download a file. You could say, well, compare against this, and if you could run a subset of the buffer things and say compare against what we've got in the database.
But
I don't know.
correct me if I'm wrong. The comparison algorithm actually establishes not only it uses like a mean and standard deviation to compare and to also establish relevancy, right? So then if we do that, then that's even more expensive because for establishing a single data point, it then runs the benchmark multiple times. right? To establish a standard deviation and a mean, you need multiple runs.
Right.
So I mean, we're talking about like a single run of a single
Right.
benchmark, right? So then I don't know if we can use that tool. Right?
Okay. I'm just thinking like if we can look at that and reuse anything or give people a similar workflow might be interesting.
Yeah, I mean the truth is to be able to run that tool on every benchmark would be ideal, even more so because if you run it once, because it takes 6 days to run everything, and you run one benchmark once and you get a value for that. I mean, that could be the outlier for all you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So
Okay, I'm gonna have to drop off, but I'll let you guys continue on.
Yeah,
I
so
assume.
I think, yeah, right now we said that we'll just open an issue and go with
Yeah,
and put forward this proposal. This is what we are going to do.
sounds good. And Udom, I assume you can PR in the minutes
Yes,
once
I
you
will.
guys finish. Okay, thank you. Talk to you guys later.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah,
Thank
bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
okay, bye.
Bye.
Hey, Gabriel.
Yep.
Do you mind opening an issue? Can you just open an issue with this site proposal, and maybe you can add few people you think would be important to this discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I'll ping the relevant groups, I guess. I'll have to look at at who touched the benchmarks, the various different benchmarks, and then just sort of mention them and see if they react. Because I mean, collaborators come and go, so they may no longer be active in that area, that kind of thing. So it'll be a little bit of a forensic task, but yeah, I guess I can try to find some cycles for this.
yeah, just open an issue at least, and add, of course, our group and few people from the core team, and let's wait for maybe a few weeks. Anyway, we have this meeting every 3 weeks, so that gives enough time if there is some interest or whatnot, and we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right. That was the only item we have on our agenda today. Is there anything else we should be discussing or want to discuss?
Yeah, I have tracked a little bit the activity of Node.js, and yeah, I would like to show some results in time, how how Node.js behaves, if this is something of interest to us.
Sure. Is there
Yes.
anything specific you want to talk about?
So I have followed this data, and I'm trying here to share the screen. I don't know how to do that. Share the screen. Yeah, share screen. Yeah. So here are some dates when I tracked the data, and here are the master, the 10x version, and so on. So what I observed at a certain stage, all the data was stagnant for more than a week. So things did not change. On 17th of June, I stopped this tracking because I didn't know if to continue or not. So it's a long time when the numbers didn't change. Today I have looked and I saw some strange numbers. So master and 10x have the same performance. I would say that it's a little bit strange. The only difference that I saw here in this column. So there are here operations per second, latency, footprint before load, and footprint after load. Does this data make sense? Is it clear, this subject?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense for sure. So 10x master and 10x. Only question is why we don't have number for the 12, 8x and canary build. And then also at the same time, why do we don't have ops per second, but we have latency for 8x, but we don't have the ops per second for 8x version, 8.x.
I don't know. This is the data that I collected, and I suspect that there might be a bug, or I don't know, maybe in the way in which the Node.js it's triggered or something. I would be happy to investigate this issue if it's needed, or if it's
okay. Do you mind opening an issue on on our
Yeah.
in issue list and just say this is the observation is, and we don't have the consistent numbers. There
Sure.
might be we are not reading. Maybe there's something to do with the MySQL dump or MySQL database. So I think someone needs to investigate that part.
Yeah, I would be happy to investigate this. So yeah, if it's possible to get a little bit of intuition of, or I don't know, somehow working on this, I will be happy because yeah, I'm not very familiar with the infrastructure of running the Node.js in the environment, so I would be happy to learn this as well.
Yeah, normally what I used to do is whenever I see something like this, I would try to reproduce on my local machine. For example, I can take, if you clone the whole benchmarking repo, you'll find all the scripts you need to run the Node.js. Run through all these various versions of Node and see whether you can reproduce any of them.
Okay.
If that works, that means there's something wrong with our setup on benchmarking, and we can go and investigate that.
I see.
But then if the first thing would be just open an issue, document this, and then take those steps.
Sure. So I shall open an issue on this site.
Yeah.
Here. Okay. I will open an issue here then. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Cool. Anything else? No.
I'm good.
Okay. Let's see.
Not on my side.
Okay. So let's. Is there any question on YouTube? No. Okay. I guess that's it. So there are two ARs, right? Two open issues we are going to open. If there's anything else, just send out an email or update the issue. And I think we'll meet in 3 weeks then.
Sounds good.
Thank you
Talk
for
to you.
your time.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.